Holy God, take my lips and speak with them. Take our minds and think with them, and take our hearts and set them on fire. Amen. Thank you, Deacon Gary, for that great gospel. I actually grew up with the woman at the well. Well, not literally, but in a roundabout way. You see, I wanted to learn to play the guitar. And in the 60s, Peter, Paul, and Mary had this song, Jesus Met the Woman at the Well. And I practiced it and practiced it. I knew that song inside out. The song tells the story, but not all the story. Just like you can see a painting of Jesus and the disciples, for example. And it tells some of the story, but it doesn't tell all the story. There's always more. I hope by now all of you have seen the movie, The Chosen. Have you seen it? There's a great scene in that movie of this Samaritan woman meeting Jesus at the well. The woman in the movie is young. She is beautifully dirty. She's hot and sweaty and been carrying these big water jugs by herself in the heat of the day. And the conversation then ensues with Jesus, and it's the longest one that he has with anyone in the Bible. And that can't be an accident. It's long because he has a lot of story to uncover. And he has status quo boundaries that he has to cross. And also it's long because it is a remarkable exchange, a give and take conversation between Jesus and the Samaritan woman. The first boundary he crosses is being there in the first place. A Jew in the land of the Samaritans. They were established enemies from decades of religious conflict. They were like feuding cousins, justifying their own beliefs, and each side was right. The Judeans looked down on the Samaritans because of their mixed heritage. Well, the heritage was mixed because the Assyrians had conquered their land, and most of the inhabitants had been deported. And the land was then repopulated with a mixture of other conquered people who became known as the Samaritans. And as a Jewish man, there were rules about how to interact with others, especially with Samaritans. Sharing was not in the cards. You weren't going to share a conversation with a woman, especially an unaccompanied woman, and you weren't going to share water either. But Jesus goes right into the heart of the conflict. He doesn't go around it. He doesn't avoid it. He sees the conflict differently. He sees the hurtfulness of exclusion. And this is a theme that we see over and over again in the Bible. How do we see through the eyes of Jesus? How do we respond to a world with the same wholeness and healing love that he has? It's as if he sees everything all at once. And he challenges us into a whole new mode of perception. It's not what we see, but how we see. How we see. Instead of judging her, he engages her. He invites her, and he invites us to see her as he does, as someone to be in relationship with God. The disciples saw Jesus with the Samaritan woman, forbidden territory to be avoided. But Jesus saw it differently. He saw how trusting in God's love could bring comfort and peace and acceptance. And he saw what could happen when she understood about spirit and truth in her life. Her truth was that she had no husband. His truth, Jesus' truth, was that not only was he the Messiah, but he was the I am. And he declares that first to her. I am the one who is speaking to you. Now remember last week, Jesus had told Nicodemus, the curious Pharisee, remember, who came at night, and he told him about the Spirit. The Spirit is wild, he said. It blows where it wants. Surprising, it's disruptive, powerful, unpredictable. It brings light and warmth to cold and dark places. No corner of creation is off limits to the Spirit. And Nicodemus, in his wisdom, he responds, how can this be? How can these things be? But this Samaritan woman is quick to understand the lure of the Spirit. Give me some of this water, she says, so that I never have to be thirsty again or come back to the well to draw water. She gets it. And I love her for having the openness to ask, give me some of this water. It was a huge leap for her to ask. We can only imagine how broken she had become, disheartened, disillusioned, disenfranchised. No friends to accompany her to the well. No friends to laugh with, to have conversation and companionship with. But she is offered transformation and hope that she had been waiting for her entire life. And she says, yes. Thank God for people who say yes. Saying yes requires trust. When she says yes, she trusts that God has offered her a place to rest, to listen, to get water, and to be nourished always, always and again. She experiences what Thomas Merton, who's a theologian and author who died in the mid-60s, he talks about the always open gate. He said the gate of heaven is everywhere. It's not just in heaven. The gate is everywhere, always open, even at the well. And our job is to stop and ask and seek and find. Several years ago, probably close to 10 years ago, Jack Churchill from our church said yes to prison ministry when I asked him if he would join our team. We, of course, are still grieving Jack's loss, his death. But I am grateful for his yes, but more grateful that Jack found his calling in that prison ministry. It was something that he had been looking for years. And of course, you remember Mary said yes to the angel Gabriel. And as we celebrate women in history this month, time and again, we see women saying yes to trust where the Spirit leads. So the Samaritan woman is in really good company. The question we have to ask ourselves, of course, is what keeps us from trusting to say yes? Is it fear that we won't measure up? Fear that we aren't good enough? Is it fear of success, like a perfectionist, not being satisfied with an A, wanting to know why it wasn't an A+? They're two extremes, not good enough, perfectionist. Either example is an element of ego. I'll call it control. Thinking that we are in charge and not trusting that God's grace is always in charge. The element of ego makes us think that if the outcome isn't what we expected, we did something wrong. But think about the Samaritan woman in the story and her transformation. She starts from a place of brokenness, loneliness, disappointment. And she encounters Jesus, who treats her without judgment, without fear, without animosity, with total acceptance and love. And then she questions the situation. Why? Why are you asking me for water? And she holds her ground with him in a little theological challenge. And then she makes a turning point. Then she shifts. She asks for the living water, the water that never runs dry, the Spirit of life that refreshes us regardless of who we are or what we've done. The Spirit of life that is available always and again. She lets go of control. She sets her ego aside. And she asks, "Give me this living water," she says. Last week, Bridges Reentry, our nonprofit, held its 4th training session for its Beyond the Gates mentoring program. And the program matches volunteer mentors with mentees who are just returning into society from prison. And the program itself is a big ask, 1-year commitment from both the mentor and the mentee to develop a relationship of trust. Our featured mentee for the evening talked about being in a state of willingness to enter into an unknown territory and to sign up for a mentor that she didn't know. And I've been thinking about the power of that state of willingness when we are able to embrace the unknown and trust that God offers a place to rest, to listen to the whole story, and always and again be refreshed and to belong. Now, I'm not totally sure which comes first, the state of willingness, the trust, or the Spirit. Perhaps the order doesn't really matter. What matters is the willingness to meet to encounter and to know God. The Samaritan woman was so excited to tell her community what she had experienced that she left her water jugs behind. Certainly a reminder for us during Lent to think what things we need to leave behind so that we can say yes to the surprising and always powerful Spirit. Amen.
Amen.